you know that you shouldn't send this email. Step away from your computer. Walk around, take several deep breaths, get a glass of water, and when you've calmed down, you can begin to revise the email. Consider what could happen if you were to send this email. Your professionalism and integrity would be questioned. Also, your writing skills would definitely be questioned. Of course, when you write an email, and I would advise you, even when you're writing email in a personal perspective to a friend or to a relative, really you shouldn't use email abbreviations. I think any time that you can write effectively and properly, it's always good to do so. But definitely for a professional email, business email, you do not want to use all caps, because all caps means that you are shouting at the reader. Of course, you do not want to use email abbreviations either. So this email is wrong on so many levels. So if you feel tempted to send such an email, don't. Step back, think about it, and then begin the revision process. Another way to separate yourself from the heat of the moment is to revise or write the email first in Word or another software package. When you do this, you are really disconnecting yourself from this medium. Also, you are less likely to let your guard down, or you're less likely to let your inhibitions down. And also, another benefit of doing this is it gives you another step. In other words, when you write it in Word, it will prevent you from premature email distribution, so you will not regret sending an email. So you have various levels there of protection, so to speak, and that's really what you want. So let's take a look at a revision of this email. All right, dear Jessie, thank you for coming to the meeting. Listening to various points of view sometimes leads to information sharing and problem solving. The data that you presented was misinterpreted. First, the customer service approval percentage has increased by 20% over the previous quarter. Please refer to Chart 2, Customer Service Satisfaction Rate, for the breakdown. Second, efforts in the advertising and promotion of our new products have decreased by 20%. Please refer to Chart 5, Results of Advertising and Promotion Efforts. A thorough explanation and interpretation of the data appear in the report. It is important for each manager to strive for the same goals in order to make the company competitive in the electronic industry. Let us meet face-to-face to discuss the results of the report. All right, so this email definitely, or this revision definitely has a better tone, a professional tone, and it also explains the writer's point of view. So the writer begins with a buffer, and this buffer introduces neutrally the overall mission that the writer is trying to get to the reader. The second paragraph provides details to substantiate the writer's claim. And then the third paragraph is really a goodwill ending, and it has a statement that everyone, the reader and the writer, can agree on. And then it is a suggestion for a face-to-face discussion of the results. Now, of course, email is very important in business, and it does serve as a record of communication amongst employees. But let's not forget the importance of face-to-face communication. That is really important, and you really can explain and get your points across even better face-to-face. And it's also important to see that nonverbal communication and be able to interpret that nonverbal communication. So let's not forget the importance of all types of communication: interpersonal and oral and nonverbal. When you send a message such as this revision, you are demonstrating emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is the ability to manage oneself and interact with others in a mature and constructive way. It involves the ability to recognize and identify your feelings, the ability to handle your feelings in a productive and appropriate manner, the ability to set and achieve goals, delay the immediate gratification of an impulse, and maintain a positive outlook, and the ability to be sensitive and to understand the feelings of others, and the ability to interact with others in a positive and productive manner. With this revision, you are now ready to demonstrate your professionalism and integrity and your ability to write an effective email. So let's copy this message. Okay, so now we have our effective email. There are a few changes, however, that we need to make. And the first is, let's expand this subject line so that it is more informative. Also notice that we have a salutation. So your email really should have a salutation and a closing. So we have Dear Jessie here. Then we have the message, and then we have the closing, sincerely, and then the writer would write his or her name. So now we are ready to send this message to Jessie. It projects professionalism. It gives him information about the discrepancies in the information that he presented at the meeting, and then it also opens the door for communication. So, you know, another way to really open the door more so that Jessie understands the importance of this face-to-face communication would be to put a time in which the reader and the writer can meet. So let's get rid of this blind copy, because Thomasina would have sent her message to everyone and Jessie would not have known. Now you do really want to consider that. I mean, is it really necessary to send blind copies to workers and not let the recipient of your email, not let that person know? So you really do want to consider that. So in this case, we are just going to delete the blind copy. Harold Jenkins is their supervisor. I don't know, this is another area that we really want to consider. At this point, is it really necessary to call the supervisor in? Well, that's definitely a decision that you need to ponder. And in this case, I'm going to say no, so we can delete the supervisor getting involved at this point. Because I think now that Thomasina has diffused the situation and she has included information to support her point of view, now the two of them can meet and it can just be the two of them. It doesn't have to be discussed in front of everyone, again, at this point. So now the email is ready to be sent. Another, however, before we send it, another point that I want to make is the use of the passive voice here. Now approximately 80% of your writing should be in the active voice. However, that 15% in which it is allowed in business writing is when you want to soften the tone and you want to save space for the reader. So instead of saying you misinterpreted the data, which is really blaming the reader, the data that you presented was misinterpreted is a better way, a softer way of presenting the information. So usually when you want to soften the tone and when you present bad news is when you want to use that passive phrasing. And again, that's only around 15% of your writing. Otherwise, you're going to phrase everything in the active voice. So now we are ready to send the message, and both Thomasina and Jassy will receive messages that are very professional.